Resourceful Designer, episode 194, Useful Single-Purpose Apps.
Welcome to the Resourceful Designer podcast, offering solutions to streamline your graphic and web design business so you can get back to designing. And now your host. He would love to go back to school just to expand his knowledge, Mark Dickote.
That is so true, Wayne. It's been since '92 when I graduated from college, and I still miss the experience. If I had more time, I would definitely go back just to learn things. I don't know what I would want to learn, but I would just love to go back to school, the classroom settings. I miss that. But what can you do? I'll tell you what I can do. I can welcome you to the podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, for plugging me in your ears, turning me on in your car, maybe listening while you're doing a little bit of design work. Hope I'm not too distracting if that's the case. In this week's episode, I'm going to share a bunch of apps that I use that I like to call One Trick Ponies, meaning that the apps are good for only one thing, but that one thing, they do it very, very well. Now, what have I been up to? Well, this past week, I've gotten quite a few little things done. I finished off a small website for a client. It hasn't quite launched yet. They've approved the website. Everything is complete. It's been uploaded to the server, but I don't have access to their domain name, so I've given them instructions on how to update their DNS records in order to point it at the website, and for some reason, they're taking their sweet time on doing that. So the website's all done. They've paid me for it, but it's not actually live yet. I also helped a lovely lady with her social media branding. She's has a new podcast, and the podcast art was already done. She had it done elsewhere, but she needed help continuing that brand for her social media presence. So I gave her a hand with that, designed a few things so that she could spruce up her Instagram, mostly for Instagram, but just spruce up her posts so that people would know they were coming from her. So I created kind of a guideline for her, as well as a few little banners and stuff that she could put over her social media to help brand it to her podcast. And I've also been working on a couple of photo retouching. This is something I hadn't done in a really long time, but a really, really good friend of mine wanted to do a Christmas present for some family members and had some really old photos that just had some of them were fading a little bit. A couple of them had cracks in the emulsion, like the paper, so I had to scan them in and kind of touch up where the cracks were, fix some of the discoloration. These are all old black and white photos, so having some fun retouching that sort of stuff. It's not something I get to do on a regular basis, but it's always fun just to see how well you can make the photos, how you can touch them up to the point where nobody knew that anything was wrong with them to begin with. So having a little bit of fun with that one. Now, I'll tell you what else I'm having fun with, and that's the Resourceful Designer community. I'll tell you, those guys and gals in there, they're keeping me on my toes. Now we're talking about starting a book club where people will be reading various books to help with our design business and discussing them, trying to figure out the best strategies and the best advice from these various books. They're also talking, we want to get together and have a special video chat for all the group members where we can kind of announce our goals for the new year. At the time we're recording this episode, we're in December of 2019. So they want to get a meeting put together where we can all discuss what we've done in this past year and what our goals are for 2020. And that way the other members can help hold everybody accountable. So by putting your goals forward and not just keeping them to yourself, it makes it much more easier to stay on track, especially if people are constantly asking you, so how are you doing with this? How's this coming along? And that's one of the benefits of the Resourceful Designer community, is that everybody in there acts as accountability partners. We're there to help, to push, to encourage, and everybody is doing it. And I think everybody is growing. Now, I don't like to speak for everybody in the group, but just the impression I'm getting is that everybody within the Resourceful Designer community has grown their business since they've become a member with the help of other members. Now, if you're running your own design business and you're looking for accountability partners, people to give you advice, or just people to encourage you when you're down or things are tough, then why not give the community a try? Visit resourcefuldesigner.com/community and sign up. And now this week's resource of the week. And I'm going back to an old staple of mine, and that's my 4-week marketing boost. If you're fairly new to the podcast, you may not have heard about this, but I put together a book that is called the 4-week marketing boost. And what it is it's 20 small tasks that you can do that will help strengthen your brand image so that you give the best first impression you can when somebody encounters you. Now, the way I laid it out is there's 20 different things you can do, and they all take roughly anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes to complete. So the idea of the 4-week marketing boost is you do one of these items every day. So maybe when you sit down in the morning, you do one, then the next day. And at the end of 4 weeks, you will be in a much better position to create a better first impression. Now, hundreds, if not thousands of designers have downloaded this over the years, and I've received lots of really great feedback about it. So if you are interested in getting this free resource, it's absolutely free, head on over to marketingboost.net, or if you are in the USA, text the word marketing boost, that's all one word, to 44222. And then you just enter your email and you will get your copy sent to you. So that's my resource of the week, the 4-week marketing boost. And now, One Trick Ponies, useful single-purpose apps. Maybe you're not familiar with that phrase, one trick pony. It's something my dad used to use all the time. He'd use it for tools that he had, or even for people sometimes. It was funny. We used to watch baseball games. I'm not really big into baseball. I don't really care for the sport. I find it a little drawn out and boring myself, but my dad loved it, and I loved sometimes spending time with him just watching. Well, my dad would often call certain players one-trick ponies, like maybe a certain pitcher. The only thing he was good at was throwing a curveball. All his other ones were like, so-so, but he was really good at a curveball, so my dad would call him a one-trick pony. But I did look it up, and according to the dictionary, one-trick pony is either a person or thing with only one special feature, talent, or area of expertise. So in the scope of today's episode, I decided to pick one-trick ponies that are applications that do one thing very, very well. Now, of course, there are thousands of useful single-purpose apps available for your computer or mobile devices or whatever, but I'm only going to share a few of them here that I personally use. Not that I have used, because I've used lots of them. These are some that I use on a regular basis, and I think that if you were to use these or something similar, it can help your business as well. Now, some of these will be Mac only, but whenever possible, I tried to find a Windows equivalent to whatever app or program I'm talking about. Now, again, because I'm a Mac user, I'm not familiar with the Windows variation of the program. Now, some of these work on both Mac and Windows, but those that I found a separate source for Windows, that's all I did was find a source. I don't know how well those programs work. I apologize, but I am a Mac person. So I have 13 resources here to share with you. And the first one is a password manager. I use 1Password. Now, arguably out of my entire list, this is the one that you might be able to say, well, this isn't really a one-trick pony, because 1Password or Lastpass, if you're using that one, first of all, available on both Mac and Windows, can do a little bit more than just one thing. But when you get right down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's a password manager. It manages passwords, meaning you don't have to remember that your password is capital X, small b, 9, 3, exclamation point, hashtag or number sign or pound sign, whatever you want to call it, open bracket, close bracket, capital B, capital P, small m. You don't have to remember that that's your password. You have to remember one single password, your main password, to get into your password manager, and then let your password manager remember all your other passwords. Now, of course, password managers like 1Password and LastPass, they can do other things. You can store other information in there, like credit card information and all that stuff. So that's why I'm saying it's more than just a one-trick pony, because there's some other things it can do. But really, 99% of the people that use one of these password managers, it's just for that purpose, to manage their passwords. So that's why I added that one as the first one on my list, because it's a one-trick pony that I could not live without. Now, the second item on my list is actually a website, and I've shared this one before on the podcast, and that's Squoosh. And you can get it at Squoosh app. That's SQUOOSH.app. And what Squoosh does is it optimizes or minimizes imagery for websites. And I use this all the time. Anytime I create in Photoshop, I try to save for web in Photoshop, and I optimize it to the best quality possible. Even then, I'll take a file that might be 100 kilobytes that I saved, optimized out of Photoshop, and then I take it into Squoosh and reduce it down to 40 kilobytes, and it looks the same. Squoosh has a bar that goes across the middle that you can drag left or right to see the before and after. Most of the time, to the naked eye, I don't see any difference between the two. So obviously, if I'm going to upload an image to a website, I'd much rather it be a 40 kilobyte file than a 100 kilobyte file. So the way I usually work is I'll build websites. Most of the time I build them in Chrome, Google Chrome, but I will have either Firefox or Safari open with Squoosh loaded so that way it's very easy for me on my Mac. I can hit Command Tab to switch between apps. So if I have an image that I want to optimize, I just hit Command Tab until I get to Firefox or Safari, whichever one has it open, drag the photo onto the screen, it automatically uploads, optimize it. I can hit the download, it downloads to my downloads folder. Then I hit Command Tab, get back to Chrome, and I just keep on working. So that's the only thing this website does, is it optimizes photos, but it does it really, really well. Now, there are other options out there, but that's the one I use. And once again, that's squoosh.app, SQUOOSH.app. Now, keep in mind that all these things that I'm sharing with you today, I will have links to them in the show notes for this episode, which you can get to at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 194. So all these links, you don't have to remember them. They're all going to be available on the show notes page. Now, the third item I have on my list, which again is both Mac and Windows, and that's BackBlaze. You've heard me talk about BackBlaze before if you've listened to the podcast before. What BackBlaze is a cloud backup solution for your computer. Now, it's not the same as Dropbox or OneDrive. You're not dragging stuff back and forth, back and forth. You set BackBlaze up, and then you forget about it. And what it does is in the background, it monitors your computer to see what files are new, and anytime it sees something new, it automatically backs it up to this cloud. So it's truly a set it and forget it application. It's a one-trick pony. It does a backup of your system. Now, yes, you can go use it to retrieve files and all that, but it's not an archival thing like Dropbox where you can drag stuff in and out and that sort of stuff. So BackBlaze is one of those things. I use it on a daily basis, but I don't even realize I do because it works in the background. I never even know it's doing its thing. But if I go up and check right now, I look in the menu bar. It has a little BackBlaze icon in the menu bar. I check and it tells me that on my computer now, everything is backed up. I have 0 files and 0 megabytes of information needing to be backed up. That means even the things that I was working on today before starting this podcast, all those files have already been backed up. So you set it up and forget it. Now, if you're interested in checking out BackBlaze, it's only, I believe, $60 per year, well worth the price. You can visit resourcefuldesigner.com/backblaze. That is my affiliate link. I do make a small commission if you do use it, but it is well worth it. I've been with them for, I think, 4 or 5 years now and absolutely love the service. Now, the next item on my list, this is Mac only, and it's called Carbon Copy Cloner. It's by Bombich Software, and if you're not familiar with this is it's a brilliant piece of software for cloning a hard drive. Now, what does that mean? That means you set it up, and it makes an exact duplicate of whatever hard drive you ask it to copy. So, for example, if your computer, your desktop computer or your laptop, you have another external hard drive, you can say, I want an exact duplicate of whatever my hard drive is here over on this other external. Now, you can set it up on a schedule and let it run, and it'll constantly do, similar to like what BackBlaze does, it'll just keep updating it so that the clone hard drive will always match the other one. Now, the reason you might want a clone of your hard drive, especially with a laptop or that, is because it's a clone and not just a drag and drop copy, the hard drive is actually bootable from. So if your hard drive fails in your computer or your laptop, something happens to it and the hard drive craps out, you have another hard drive. All you need to do is plug it in and you can boot up your computer from that other hard drive because it's an identical copy. So although I don't have it plugged in to constantly update, I have Carbon Copy Cloner and I make sure I go in on a regular basis. I have a USB hard drive. I used to do this with old hard drives that were FireWire and before that SCSI, if you can remember that. It's been around that long and it is a great piece of software for just duplicating, cloning a hard drive. And that's all it does. Now, I do have an article, if you look in the show notes, I do have an article that lists 7 Windows alternatives to Carbon Copy Cloner. So I'm not going to list them all, but if you're interested, you can visit the show notes for this episode and see that article that lists 7 Windows alternatives, because that one is only Mac. Now, another Mac-only program that I love is Disk Inventory X. Now, there is a Windows equivalent, which Disk Inventory X is actually based upon, and that's WinDirStat, or which is short for Windows Directory Statistics, I think. So WinDirStat is the Windows equivalent, but the Mac one is Disk Inventory X. And what this does is it looks at your entire hard drive and it breaks it down into file sizes. So it tells you where all the space that's being used up on your hard drive, where it's coming from. And what I love is the visual representation. It creates this grid with different size squares. So the bigger the square, the more space the file is taking up on your hard drive. So it makes it really easy to go in and see, oh, well, this is taking up a lot of room. Is it something I can get rid of? This is great for laptops. If you've got a limited amount of space, then you can go in and pick and choose. And what's great is it's color coded. So you'll have images are one color, videos are another, audio is another, documents are another, applications are another. They're all different colors. So you can look and see, okay, well, I have so many photos that are maybe, I forget what color photos are. So let's say gray. So all the gray areas there, those are all photos. Well, you can look at them and say, okay, I got a lot of photos. Maybe I can get rid of some of those, clear up some space. Not to mention looking through at the photos and say, okay, well, all these photos are like little squares. What's this one here that's a really big square? Why is that one so big? And then you can find out that maybe it was saved wrong or something. And you can go in and free up space that way. So Disk Inventory X, they've been around for a long time. I've been using them for years. And as I said, there is a Windows equivalent, which is WinDirStat, which when I looked at it, it looks very, very similar. So as I said, Disk Inventory X was based off that one. Definitely a useful piece of software. And I believe it's free. If I remember correctly, I believe it's free. So it's worth checking out. Now, the next bit of software on my list is Font Doctor. Now, this is by Extensis at extensis.com, and it's available both Mac and Windows. Now, of course, this is paid software, but Font Doctor, what it does is, well, the name basically implies it. If you have a font that's corrupted or not working or something wrong with it, you run it through Font Doctor and it fixes it. This has saved my bacon so many times over the years because most of the time when you have a computer problem, I know in the past, I don't know if it's still the case now, but back when I used to do system management and was fixing computer issues, I'd say 80, if not plus, % of the time, if there was an issue with a computer, it usually came down to a font, a corrupt font. Especially if it was a document. If you were working in Quark Express or even in InDesign afterwards, or whatever program, and something kept crapping out on you, or a file wasn't printing properly, it usually came down to a font issue. And Font Doctor has saved me so many times over the years. It actually comes if you get Suitcase Extension to manage your font. That's my font manager of choice. Font Doctor comes free with it, but you can purchase it separately. And it's a simple drag and drop. You take a font that you suspect being corrupt, you drag it on top, and it fixes it. That's as easy as it gets. So that's a great one-trick pony. Now, the next thing I have on my list is Grammarly. Now, if you don't know what Grammarly is, it's a robust, it's more than a spell checker. It's grammar and so much more. It goes through your documents, stuff that you're writing, and not only suggests grammar corrections and spelling corrections, but depending on the purpose, if you want something to be formal or informal, if you want something to be casual, informative, direct, like you can pick different tones and it'll help you to write it in that way. It warns me when I forget to put a comma after my introductory sentence, or I'm using passive voice, or I put a preposition at the end of a sentence, and all sorts of stuff like that. It works great on the computer. There's plugins for browsers, so when I'm typing, even leaving a comment on Facebook, it'll tell me if I'm writing something that doesn't sound proper. So if you do any sort of writing, Grammarly is definitely worth looking into. And it's available on both Mac and Windows. Now, the next little application has been around for a long time on Mac. Again, Mac only, although I do have an article in the show notes that has Windows alternatives. And this is Little Snitch. Now, Little Snitch is a great little program, and I don't always have it. Sometimes, I will admit, sometimes it gets a little annoying. But what Little Snitch does is it monitors your network activity and lets you know whenever one of your applications is trying to connect somewhere, trying to contact somebody. So maybe when you installed your Adobe Creative Cloud, you gave Adobe permission to report issues, or sometimes it'll say something like, let us know how you use the program so we can better incorporate features or updates and stuff like that. Well, Little Snitch will let you know, oh, this program is trying to contact Adobe whatever, or this program is looking there. Sometimes it's as simple as a program checking for updates, but it keeps track and it lets you know. And you'd be surprised at how many of the applications you run are actually in the background without you knowing it, contacting some server somewhere or some host or whatever. They're sending out information. Well, Little Snitch can help you monitor that thing to find out, especially if you're having internet problems or bandwidth problems. Have a look and see what is using up your bandwidth. Why is your computer acting the way it's acting? And sometimes it could be some application that's running in the background, a utility or something that is communicating somewhere back and forth that is taking up bandwidth that maybe you don't need. And you can block them with Little Snitch. You can create firewalls and block these sort of things, or just give you awareness of what programs are doing what. So a great little program that's all it does, is monitors your network activity. Now, the next application I have on my list, available for both Mac and Windows, is Mamp. What Mamp does is it creates a web server on your local computer that allows you to run a website locally. I don't use this on a regular basis, but it is very, very useful. I always have it on my computer. And it's another one-trick pony. That's all it does, is it creates a server on your computer for you to run a website on. So you can set it up, you can install Windows locally, you can build an entire computer. So you can actually build a computer without having internet access. And then whenever you do have internet access, you upload the computer or the website to whatever host or that you need to. So Mamp is great for troubleshooting problems or just looking at various things that have to do with websites. Now, as I said, I don't use it on a regular basis. I actually prefer to build my websites on the actual server they're going to reside on, because that way I know for sure that it's 100% accurate. Because if you're going to build it on one place and then move it somewhere else, some servers differ in certain areas, so you never know what's going to go wrong. But it has helped me so many times in the past, just needing to do something locally. So that's Mamp. And there is a free version, which is the one I use. And there is a Mamp Pro, a pro version that I believe you have to pay for. But honestly, I don't know what the difference is. I use the free one. Now, the next software that I have listed here is Paparazzi. And this is a Mac-only program. It's Paparazzi with an exclamation point. And what Paparazzi does is it creates screen captures of websites. So basically, if you need a screen capture of a website, you open Paparazzi, you put in the URL for the website, you tell it what format you want, if you want it as a PNG, a JPEG, a TIFF, or a PDF, and then it creates a screenshot. But when I say a screenshot, it captures the entire page. So you don't have to create a screenshot, scroll, create a screenshot, then scroll, and then stitch them together. It doesn't matter how tall the page is and whether it's visible on screen or not. It'll capture it and put it into one very tall, very long screen capture. Now, in looking for this, because I knew it was Mac only, so I decided to look to see if there was a Windows equivalent, and I did come across a neat feature that I didn't know Google Chrome has. So here's a little trick. You can do this without any application in Google Chrome. Now, on the Mac, what you do is you open up whatever website you want to get a screen capture of. And on your Mac, you will hit Alt, Command, then the letter I, and that'll open up the developer menu. Then you hit Command-Shift-P for print, and it'll come up with a little text area, and then you type in the word screenshot. And as you do this, there's going to be multiple options. Would say, do you want to capture the full screen, only a section of the screen, and that? And you just say capture the full size screenshot, and it'll just add it to your downloads folder. It creates a PNG of the entire website. Now, on Windows side, that would be Control-Shift-I and then Control-Shift-P, but it works exactly the same. But you have to be using the Chrome browser for this. Now, I will include these instructions as well as an article that I found talking about this. I'll include that in the show notes for this episode. But that's a different way to do it if you're using Chrome. But what I like about Paparazzi, which is again Mac only, is the different formats. You can save to JPEG as well as PDF. And I've been using Paparazzi for years when I just found out about this Chrome thing, which, as I said, a few extra steps. You have to hit one command and then another command, then type something in and then select. But if you're using Chrome, you already have this. So check out the show notes for the instructions on how to do this. Number 11 on my list is PDF Key Pro. And this is available for both Mac and Windows at pdfkey.com. And what PDF Key is a program to unlock locked PDFs. I don't know if you've ever had to either print. Sometimes you can tell, maybe you're not aware of this, but you can create a PDF and say that I don't want people to print this PDF. So you can lock it so that it can't be printed. Or you can lock it, put a password on it so that you need the password in order to print it, or need the password in order to edit it. So even if you try to open the PDF in Adobe Illustrator because you want to get something out of it, well, sometimes that PDF may be locked and it says it won't let you. Well, guess what PDF Key does? It bypasses that. It removes the locks. It actually creates a copy of the PDF and unlocks it. It removes that password protection. Now, some people will say, well, the whole point of the password protection is because you don't want people to do that. But sometimes it can be really annoying. As a designer, I love opening up a PDF and grabbing elements for a client. Say a client brings me, say they want me to do a brochure, and they have a PDF of an old brochure and it has some elements that they want to use. Well, the easiest thing to do is open up that PDF and grab those elements. You open it up in Illustrator, pick out those elements you need, and bring them over to the new one. Well, if that brochure is locked because the previous designer put a lock on it, PDF Key Pro will unlock it for you. So I've had that on my system for years. It's not something I use very often, but when I do, it is extremely, extremely handy. And One Trick Pony, that's all it is. When you open it up, it's a little window with an unlock icon. You drag your PDF on top of that, and that's it. It does its thing. You don't have to worry about anything else. The next application I have is Mac only, and you'll understand why. TNEF's Enough, or TNEF''S Enough. And the reason this is a Mac only app is because Windows doesn't need this. What this is a way for you to open winmail.dat attachments. If you're on a Mac, you may have received emails from people, from clients that say, here, I'm sending you some files and all that. And when you get the email, there's nothing there except for some attachment that's winmail.dat. And you're saying, well, I can't do anything with this. Well, TNEF's Enough for Mac is an application where you drag that winmail.dat file over it and it'll open up so you can actually get those attachments. Now, those, I'm not going to go into the whole detail of it. This usually happens when somebody is using, I believe it's an Exchange server. If their email system is set up through an Exchange servers send the proper thing to somebody else who's also on Exchange. But if it's going outside of an Exchange server to somebody who's not, then it creates this winmail.dat file. So that's another one that saved me so many times over the years. I used to just email back to the client and say, can you please try sending different ways and that? I can't open this attachment. Well, with this utility, you just drag the winmail.dat file over it and it opens it up, and then you can grab the attachments from it. And that brings me to the last thing on my list, and that is VLC. VLC is available for both Mac and Windows, and it's just an all-purpose video player. Now, this one, just like 1Password, you could say it does a little bit more because it can do some saving, you can do some minor editing and stuff with it, but most people, the sole purpose of this is to be able to watch videos in different formats. And what's great about it is it doesn't matter what format the video is in, chances are VLC will be able to play it. So whenever you get some sort of video from a client, you download something, whatever it is, if you're having an issue, VLC will probably be able to deal with it. So those are the One Trick Ponies. These are applications. I went through my application list and there was some other ones in there, but I started thinking, it's like, that application does a little bit more than just one particular thing. But I went through and I said, which applications do I use that do only one thing and do that one thing very well? So once again, I'll just quickly go through the list. There was 1Password. There's Squoosh, which is actually a website. There's BackBlaze. Carbon Copy Cloner, Disk Inventory X, Font Doctor, Grammarly, Little Snitch, Mamp, Paparazzi, PDF Key Pro, Tenef Sanough, and VLC. So if you're interested in knowing any more about this, you can visit the show notes at resourcefuldesigner.com/episode 194, which is the episode for One Trick Ponies. And all the links to all of these programs will be available there. You can have a look. Now, keep in mind, some of the links are affiliate links. Actually, I think BackBlaze might be the only one. No, Grammarly, I have an affiliate for that one too. But everything else there is just a link for you to check out if you're interested in, as well as a couple of the programs that I said had, they were Mac only, but I had a Windows equivalent that you can find, or an article about which ones are best for Windows. You can find those links to those articles on the show notes page as well. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. Now, I would love to know what sort of applications or utilities you use that you consider one-trick ponies. Please leave them in the comments below. Give a link to the application. I'd love to check them out. Maybe there's some useful things that me and as well as other people would be interested in. So please leave a comment. Now, if you're not already subscribed to Resourceful Designer Podcasts, I think now's a really good time because next week's episode, I'm going to be talking about design hacks to increase productivity. These are things that I do that I've learned over the years that have helped speed up my production and just make me a better designer. So you're not going to want to miss that episode. And the best way not to miss an episode is to subscribe to the podcast. So you could follow it on Spotify, you can download the app, or whatever podcast player you're using to listen to it, just hit the subscribe button. And if you're not sure, visit resourcefuldesigner.com/subscribe for various ways to do so. And remember, if you are looking for an accountability partner, somebody to help you, to give you advice, to just make sure you stay on track for growing your design business, then consider joining the Resourceful Designer community. Those inside keep telling me that it's well worth the value. And you can get that at resourcefuldesigner.com/community. So that's it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to share the podcast with a friend if you think they would get any value out of it, because there's no sense hoarding it all to yourself. Well, until next time, I am Mark Decote, wishing you all the best with your graphic design business and reminding you to stay creative.
Thanks for listening to the Resourceful Designer Podcast at resourcefuldesigner.com.